Channel 250. Please remember to download both the Barn Burner and ZingoTV apps in their respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. And while you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are 100% free. ZingoTV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks, as well as Roku and Roku sticks, and they're also available on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Now let's get right into stolen bases for this week, because we have quite a lot of developing free agency news to talk about here today. The first one being is that the Blue Jays are interested in picking up Justin Turner. Now, if I'm the Jays front office here, if you're in win now mode, I could definitely see Toronto wanting to grab somebody like Justin Turner on a 1-year contract, but like it's so, I don't know, the Jays aren't in win now mode. At least they shouldn't be, because they're still not that team yet. They're still not the team to beat in the American League. And I would argue to say that New York and Houston are still those two teams that you gotta go after, and you don't have nearly the roster yet. Yes, you got Vladdy, and we'll get more into Vladdy in today's episode as he's made some headlines over this weekend, but they got Vladdy, you got Bo Bichette, you got all these young guys who maybe aren't necessarily at their peak potential yet, and it's going to take a little while for them. Grabbing somebody like Justin Turner for only 1 year, and he only wants a 1-year deal, that's not necessarily the greatest thing to do if you're a young team. Now, yes, it's good to get veteran presence. I do agree with that. But at the end of the day, you have to kind of look at it and think, well, why? Why? I really don't understand it. Obviously, I think he's going to re-sign with the Dodgers on that 1-year deal to try to win again. I don't see why Toronto should be even going after him, right? So the Toronto infielder with Turner at third base, it would be Vlad Guerrero Jr., Cavan Biggio at second, Bo Bichette at short, and Turner at third. I could see why they want to kind of try to get that third base position nabbed, because obviously you can put Vladdy at first. He's not that bad at first base, but you kind of look at it and think, the Jays have Travis Shaw, right? But he's a free agent. He may not want to go back, and Vladdy wants to play third. We saw flashes of him at third base last season. He was actually pretty good. So I don't see why the Jays really need to go in here and sign a third baseman, considering the fact that you have guys who can play that position, and you have a guy who you can mold into that position in Vladdy to be that next third baseman. But honestly, I think Turner does re-sign with the Dodgers. Yes, he batted 300 with 26 runs scored, 4 homers, 23 RBIs, and a stolen base in the shortened season last year. And you kind of look at that, you kind of look at those numbers and think, yeah, he was injured a lot of the time. That's also something that the Jays really kind of struggled with last season, was injuries. Yes, they still made the playoffs, but they still had injuries towards that roster. And Justin Turner is kind of an injury-prone player, and he's going to want a lot more money than the average 36-year-old player. So that's why I don't see him going to Toronto again. Right, Turner could end up just leaving the Dodgers because he already won that World Series ring and finally got what he wanted. Maybe he just wants to make some money somewhere else. We don't know. But I would say for the Jays fans out there, it's not an ideal move to go after somebody when you're not in win now mode. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't know what anyone else's thought, any other Jays fans' thoughts are on Justin Turner potentially going to Toronto, but that's my intake on it. I just don't think it would be a good signing. It's just kind of a pointless one. You don't need him there, really. Yeah, you could have him bat in the fifth seat of the lineup, maybe the fourth spot even, but the only additional thing that gets added to that is you get an additional power boost to your lineup, and you can't really put him at third base. He's not the best fielder anymore at the age of 36. So you would kind of have to put him in your DH spot. And you could even arguably put Vladdy sometimes in that DH spot. So I mean, whatever the Jays decide to do, it's up to them. But I just don't think that signing Turner right this very second what is a good move. I think in 3 years' time it would be a good move to sign Justin Turner, but not right now. Now we're going to go over to Colorado, where we talk about Nolan Arenado. He still remains a trade target for the Colorado Rockies, aka they are trying to trade Nolan Arenado. He signed a massive contract at the beginning of last season, and he has GM problems, coach problems. He does not like it up in Colorado. He wants to leave. Now the question is, where is he going to go, right? He has a 6-year, almost $200 million deal. Now that's remaining off of an 8-year, $260 million contract signed. And like, you still have 6 years and over $200 million on a contract. And you are, I believe Arenado is about 29, 30 years old. I'm not 100% sure. Now, Nolan Arenado, he can opt out of this 6-year deal in 2021. So there is an option for him there if he really wanted to opt out, and Colorado would have had to have owed him a ton of money. Now, the LA Dodgers have been mentioned in trade talks, but according to Saunders, Rockies owner Dick Monfort, he's extremely hesitant to trade for Nolan Arenado, and I don't blame him. I think Arenado provides such great skill on the field with his excellent fielding, excellent hitting, and excellent speed. But at the end of the day, you're going to be getting good production, but you're kind of going to be getting a locker room guy who's not that great. I don't think he's a good locker room guy. I think he's in win now mode. I think if he doesn't win with Colorado, or at least Colorado doesn't make the playoffs for this season, I think he's gone. I don't think he's going to stay on that team. I don't think it would be a good fit. Nolan Arenado during the shortened season ended up batting .253 with 23 runs scored, 8 home runs, and 26 RBIs. And now I would think that he's not going to go to an NL West team. He's not going to go to a team in the same division, because they have been receiving offers from division rivals. But at the end of the day, it's got to be that Arenado just has to stick it out in Colorado. You signed this contract for a reason, and you can opt out of it in 2021 if you want to. But at the end of the day, you're just costing the Rockies a lot of money, and you're costing them the chance to be able to move up within their own division. And I just hope that Arenado doesn't go ring chasing like a lot of the players nowadays have really been doing. And if he ends up doing that, he's going to go to either the Dodgers, the Yankees, or like any of these teams that we think are going to win within the next 1 or 2 years, or have a chance at winning. So even like Arenado could end up going to Houston if they don't end up re-signing too many guys and they tank for a season, right? Like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Nolan Arenado, but I think he could potentially be traded this winter. Now, a lot of people are saying that he will end up getting traded. Now, the question is where, right? Some people, like Washington Nationals, are an option. They need some third base help pretty desperately, but the problem is they have not a lot of money on the table, and you're having to give a guy 6 years at almost $200 million. You're going to have to give up quite a lot as well, and a lot of teams just aren't really able to give up that much, right? The Nationals are able to give up quite a lot. The Cardinals and Giants are able to give up quite a lot if Arenado really wanted to go to San Fran or to St. Louis. And again, the Dodgers, right? I don't know how the Dodgers would be able to do it, because unless the Rockies were to release Arenado in 2021, the Dodgers just can't get him. Like, they've already signed Mookie Betts to $300 million. Now you're going to have Arenado at almost $200 million. That's $500 million between two players over the next 6 years. Like, that's just something for, if you're the Dodgers, you're in win now mode. That's something that you can try to do, but you're really stretching the salary cap there if you're going to go ahead and try to get Nolan Arenado, especially when you already have a pretty decent core of the team that won last year. I don't think that if the Dodgers get Arenado, I don't think that makes them any better because they already had a really good team. I just think with Arenado, it's just going to disrupt chemistry on the team. And you're not going to, let's just say you're not going to have good looks when you have Arenado, who's kind of a locker room cancer on your team. And I don't see the Dodgers being any better with it. So for me, Nolan Arenado, he's going to stay in Colorado for that first year. But then the big news will come out in 2021. It's going to be the big news of baseball that he's going to just drop out of the contract and have another team try to sign him. And I think that for Arenado, if he's looking to ring chase, that's a good move. But if you're just looking to play baseball and live an established career, then it's not really the best move ever. You just kind of have to stick it out then in Colorado if you're looking for that. But if not, then it will be interesting to see what ends up happening in 2021. But for right now, I think Arenado in 2020, he will be staying in Colorado. Now, moving on over to New York City, where we talk about one of the teams that is going to be big spenders in free agency, and that is the New York Mets. Now, the New York Mets have already been pretty active this far throughout the off season. And I think that it gives a lot of credit over to the new owner and Steve Cohen, because a lot of the times we would see that the Mets would be going after key name free agents and marquee players, but they would never be able to end up getting them. And Steve Cohen has been able to do fantastic so far in being able to get top players. They kept Marcus Stroman. They were able to sign Trevor May to a 2-year deal, and they aren't done there. The New York Mets are reportedly going after top free agent relief pitcher Liam Hendricks. Now, Liam Hendricks does rank as the best reliever on the free agent market this winter, and he is the number 20 ranked free agent in the CBS Sports Top 60 free agent rankings. Now, the thing with Liam Hendricks, right? He's got a great fastball slider combo. You never know when he's going to break out either pitch. He's thrown 110 innings over the last 2 years. He has under a 1.8 ERA. Just an incredible pitcher. He struck out 161 guys over 2 seasons, and he's only walked 24 guys in the past 2 years. So basically, he struck out 161 over 110 innings, and he's walked 24 batters over 110 innings. So that is basically like a walk every 5 innings, which for him is almost a walk every 5 appearances, which is that's being one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball, not letting a lot of guys get on base. You are giving up one run per game every 9 innings. It's just incredible, the fact of what he's been able to do. And obviously we know that Liam Hendricks is going to be getting a payday with whatever team he goes to. I don't think he's going to be staying with Oakland. And I just don't think that he's going to get that payday, right? He followed in the steps of Nathan Eovaldi and Brandon Morrow this postseason. He went above and beyond, and right? And I think the Mets could end up getting him because, again, this latest rumor, it's coming from after the Mets had ended up going after George Springer or starting pitcher Trevor Bauer. So again, the Mets are really all in here on trying to get a big name player to come to their team. They're also going after JT Rilamudo, right? Like, they're going after every single big name free agent that there is, essentially. And I think if I'm the Mets, I'm looking at trying to get relief help because obviously Edwin Diaz hasn't been his Seattle self since going to New York, and the relief pitching has not been the best for New York over the past few years. And it would be a great opportunity for the Mets to get someone like Liam Hendricks to be able to kind of teach this bullpen, kind of how it goes and how to pitch into key games in 7th and 8th innings, right? Because the Mets have DeGrom, somebody who is an incredible starting pitcher on his day, putting up 7-8 innings every single night, maybe giving up 1 run. But the problem is for the Mets and DeGrom, that 1 run, the Mets will lose 1-0, right? Like, they'll lose 6-0 then. They'll give up 5 runs in the 9th inning. Why? Because Edwin Diaz would come into the game and blow the game. Liam Hendricks could play as a closer role for the Mets, or he could even play as an 8th-inning setup man that they desperately need, because a lot of the runs that the Mets were giving up, especially when DeGrom and Syndergaard were starting over the past couple of years, it was always runs in the 7th and 8th and 9th inning that they were giving up that blew them the game. And you kind of looked at somebody like Liam Hendricks and the stats I've listed, right? Like 160 plus strikeouts over 110 innings of work with a 1.79 ERA over the last 2 seasons. That's just the perfect type of relief pitcher that the Mets need. And I hope the Mets end up getting better and they end up making their team good. And I hope Steve Cohen is very successful as the Mets owner of this team, because it's going to be fantastic to see what he's able to do and how the NL is going to look next year with the Mets going after all of these top free agents. And I think if I'm the Mets, if I get one of Springer or Bauer, I'm a happy camper alone, right? If you can get Hendricks as well, that's even better. Rilamudo as well, I could also add to that list, because that's basically their number one target, is to get a new catcher and replace Wilson Ramos. And to be honest with you guys, if the Mets end up signing one of those big name free agents, the record 100% improves, and they're not guaranteed a chance at postseason play. But I say if Liam Hendricks joins that team, their chances of postseason play just went up a whole ton. Now, moving on over to the Pittsburgh Pirates, we're going to be going on with more trade talks. Joe Musgrove and Adam Frazier have been appearing in Pittsburgh Pirates trade talks. Now, the Pittsburgh Pirates were linked to trade conversations with the New York Yankees, and this is a trade that could send Josh Bell and Jameson Taillon to the New York Yankees. And they would also, Joe Musgrove and Adam Frazier were also 2 more names that were mentioned in frequent trade talks with New York. Now, my big thing, if I'm Pittsburgh, why are you trading away Josh Bell? Why? I think he's been fantastic. Yes, he had a bad shortened season, but you can't have a shortened season determine your status on a player. You can't. Because hypothetically, let's say the MLB does play a full 162 game season this year, and you have a trade that goes through, and let's say it's Josh Bell, Jameson Taillon, and for Pirates players, for let's say Luke Voigt and some prospects, right? Let's say that ends up happening, right? If you're the Yankees, you've just gotten a brand new first baseman to come in. You even have a new DH if you really wanted to put him there. And you really aren't giving up that much. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm taking Josh Bell off of trade talks immediately, because if the Yankees get Josh Bell, the American League is just opened up. There's that whole new team going and making their place, especially if the Yankees were to re-sign DJ LeMahieu. It would be fantastic for them, because you look at that and then you got your first baseman, you have your second baseman, you have your shortstop at that point, and then you have your third baseman. You have that outfield core as long as they can stay healthy. You have Gary Sanchez behind the plate. That's someone who the Yankees have been trying to trade away as well due to fielding errors. And the pitching is there too. You got Garrett Cole, who you just signed to this massive contract, who's been playing out of his mind even in the shortened season. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm not trading away Josh Bell. I'm keeping him until he has a fantastic season, and then maybe trading him to a contender for a lot of prospects. But trading Josh Bell now, just not the most ideal plan if I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, Joe Musgrove and Adam Frazier were 2 names that were mentioned as other pieces to go in any trade this offseason. And Joe Musgrove had an under 4 ERA with a 1.24 whip in 39 2/3 innings with 16 walks and 55 strikeouts. Adam Frazier only batted .230 with 22 runs scored, 7 home runs, 23 RBIs, and a stolen base. And, Musgrove's 28, right? And Frazier, he's 29. He turns 29 in a couple weeks. He'll probably be 29 now as I'm making this episode. But you kind of look at it and think, the Pirates don't have a ton of marketable trade pieces. How are they going to be able to pull off a trade? And they're thinking Josh Bell, and I'm thinking, don't do that. Just don't do it. Just no. Because if you do, you're disimproving your team. You're going to lose more games, and there will be less and less Pirates fans every single day. Now, moving on over to World Series appearances from the Tampa Bay Rays. They just made a trade on Thursday afternoon. They sent first baseman Nate Lau to the Texas Rangers. In exchange, the Rangers sent over catcher Heriberto Hernandez, infielder Oslevis Basabe, and outfielder Alexander Avales to the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays had also included a minor league first baseman, Jake Guntier, and a player to be named later in the package. So for Tampa Bay in this one, they lost a lot, obviously, due to COVID. And even with making the World Series and everything, they still reported deficits. And the fact that the salary cap is going down, and a Nate Lau trade almost made sense for Tampa Bay. And the fact that the young 25-year-old just wasn't able to match up in 2020 to what he did in 2019, even off of the averages, right? He spent his final month of the regular season in the major leagues. He spent a lot of it in the minors, and he had only hit .224 with 4 homers and 11 RBIs in 21 games. Ji-Man Choi was the Rays' primary first baseman in 2020, and last year when Lau was doing really well, it was kind of the opposite, right? Where like Brandon Lau was the guy, or Nate Lau was the guy to go in and hit all those home runs, but now it's Ji-Man Choi, and he's kind of taken over his role, and it's kind of a good move for Texas to get that first baseman going again, because he had a really great 2019. And for Texas, right, they're a team that just isn't that good right now, to be honest. Texas has made a lot of moves so far in the offseason, and you would almost hope that for Texas, that they're just trying to get a team together and they're trying to make sure that they don't lose 100 games this season, because at the end of the day, you look at Texas and how they are as a team right now, and they've traded a lot of guys and they've sent in a lot of guys. And it's going to be a crazy road for the Texas Rangers fans over the next few years to be able to rebuild and get a team going that's going to win you a World Series or get you back to the playoffs where you originally should be. And that's just my opinion on it. But I think if they were to just get a few more pieces, sign some key free agents, they'll be able to compete in the American League again. Now, moving on over to the Atlanta Braves, where we talk about Marcel Ozuna for a quick second. Marcel Ozuna was named Designated Hitter of the Year in his first look at the DH role that he will have to be playing somewhat for next season. Now, Marcel Ozuna has stated himself that he is not ready to be a full-time designated hitter. But when he was introduced to the role this season for the shortened year, he was really good at it. In fact, he won DH of the Year this year. So he's proved to be one of the best designated hitters in all of baseball right now. Now, Ozuna, he was announced as the winner of the 2020 Edgar Martinez Outstanding Designated Hitter of the Year award on Friday night, which was last night. Now, the 30-year-old, he was only eligible for the honor because the MLB allowed National League teams to use the DH as a part of the COVID-19 protocols this year. But nevertheless, it still would have been Ozuna to win it, even if the NL didn't do it. I still would have given my title to Ozuna. At least, obviously, Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association would not have given it to Ozuna, but I would have. He's a fantastic guy. And I think for Ozuna, I look at that and I think, I've been doing really well in this role. Let's see if we can do it in the American League, and let's see if we can make this a thing that I do all the time. Because at the end of the day, Marcel Ozuna is not the best fielder on the planet. He really isn't. And when you look at great designated hitters, they aren't the best fielders in the world. And it's Ozuna's perfect role. And I don't get why he's so hesitant and becoming that. I get he wants to field. I get he wants to play in the outfield, but he's not that fast. He's not that good of a fielder. So if I'm any American League team and I see that Marcel Ozuna is still available in free agency, I'm picking him up 100% because that's your DH role sorted for any team in the American League because he's that good. He was the best designated hitter in all of last year. Like, it was absolutely incredible. Now, Ozuna was able to help the Atlanta Braves win a third straight National League East title, and they finished one win shy of the World Series. Now, Ozuna has also shown that he is still one of the best offensive threats in all of baseball. He hit an NL best 18 home runs, and he produced career bests in batting averages at 338, on base percentage 431, and slugging percentage at 636. Now, he did used to be an outfielder. He was an outfielder in 15 of the Braves' first 32 games, and then they finally put him in at the designated hitter position. Now, a defensive decline is ready to happen, but then once he logged in hours at the designated hitter spot, his average went up to 362 with a 464 on base percentage and a 691 slugging percentage. And he had a 1.115 OPS in a role that's usually those types of numbers are produced by guys like Nelson Cruz with a 997, Franmil Reyes with an 800, Miguel Cabrera a 743. So he's got that best. He has the best OPS in the entirety of the major leagues. And you kind of want to think now that every single American League team should at least put in an offer for this guy at the bare minimum, because if you're not putting in an offer for this guy, then I don't know what to tell you. You just don't want to win, I guess. Because, again, the best designated hitter, and the fact that the National League maybe won't be going to the designated hitter anytime soon, you kind of have to think that every American League team should be fighting for this guy's signature right now. Now, moving on, we are going to be going on and talking about a team that could be cementing themselves as potential World Series winners next year, and that is the Chicago White Sox. The Chicago White Sox indeed are going through and making some of the weirdest moves, but some of the best moves that I have seen. Now, the Chicago White Sox have gone on and acquired Lance Lynn from the Texas Rangers. Yes, the Lance Lynn, the former St. Louis Cardinal, who was putting up 500 records just a few years ago. And all of a sudden, he has now put up insane numbers in his older years. And Lance Lynn was acquired from the Texas Rangers for the young controllable right-handed starter Dane Dunning and left-handed pitching prospect Avery Weems. Now, usually most casual fans at this point would just be like, it's a durable mid-rotation guy, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But, man, the Chicago White Sox right here, right now, have just acquired probably one of the league's best pitchers for a steal for the salary. Cost-effective, only $8 million Lance Lynn will be making next season. And it's a great deal if you're the Chicago White Sox, because you had to give up, yes, you did have to give up Dave Dunning away, a pretty good pitcher there, but Chicago right now, they have a good team. Their rookies are really performing over expectations right now. And getting that good pitcher, you already have Giolito. Now you have Lance Lynn, right? You have all these really good pitchers now. Now the question of the matter is, will the White Sox be able to translate that into good playoff baseball? Will they be able to make the playoffs with this team? Or are the Chicago White Sox making more trades in this offseason? Obviously, free agency still has to happen. Chicago is going to be an active team. Whether it's the White Sox or the Cubs, both teams are going to have an effect on the free agent market. Now, in the year 2019, Lance Lynn had posted a 28.2% strikeout rate over the full standard deviation, and that is better than league average. He had a walk percentage of 6.7%, and that's over a half standard deviation better. He did slip backwards a bit in 2020, where he had a 25.9% strikeout rate in the league. That's about the average range for an MLB pitcher. And he had a 7.3% walk rate, but that's still better. That's still a half standard deviation better than the league average. So if I'm Chicago, I'm excited. If I'm a White Sox fan here, I'm excited that you just got Lance Lynn. Great pitcher, could put up really good numbers. Again, we may see his wins start to decrease a little bit as time goes along, but ultimately you're getting a pitcher who still has some pretty good stuff, a good veteran pitcher out there. And yes, you did have to get rid of one of your young lefties to be able to do it, but at the end of the day, in win now mode, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be getting those veterans that can help you get to the top and help you get to the promised land of the World Series. Now, moving on, we are going to be talking about Vladdy. Yes, guys, we are going to be talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, the reason why we're going to be talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is because he's been playing in the Dominican Republic recently, and it took Vladdy a little bit of a while to get going, but he only needed all of 2 games to get going in the Dominican Winter League. Now, he only had a single and a double in his first 8 at-bats for Leones del Escorial. But the Blue Jays infielder, he had found his power stroke last night. He had hit 2 home runs in a Puerto Rican game. And he's been playing a lot of Puerto Rican ball lately. It's just to keep him keep him loose, ready for the season. He's been hitting it really well. If you look at the home run that he hit over the left field wall for his second home run of the night, it was a towering moonshot. And if I'm a Jays fan, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, he's got his bat, it's going, but this is in the Dominican League, right? What will it be in the major leagues? Well, we don't know yet. We obviously know that Vladdy has been shedding weight lately in the offseason, and we also know that he could be coming in. He's open to playing third or first base for the team. So we could see him. We don't know exactly where he's going to be just yet. I think when spring training comes up in March, it's going to be an interesting time to see where Toronto is going to put him and what they're going to do and how they're going to ultimately go through with it. And if I'm Toronto here, I look at this and I think he's been playing really well, but let's see what he can do coming the beginning of the season. Now, moving back over to the free agency market, when will it pick up, right? Usually by now we would have some pretty big signings happen. We would see some multi-year deals in the 4s and 5s, but we haven't really seen it just yet. And I think the reason why for it is Trevor Bauer is going to be the catalyst for this year's free agent class. And here's why I say this, right? Now, we have had the White Sox trade for Lance Lynn, right? They signed Adam Eaton. The Royals have inked Carlos Santana away from Cleveland, right? But there are still all these top free agents that are up for the taking. And by the way, yes, the Carlos Santana deal was a 2-year, $17 million contract, in case anyone was wondering. Kansas had signed him up for that. But the top free agents are still in the making, right? Like we have Trevor Bauer, DJ LeMahieu, other top players, right? Now, I think LeMahieu, right, he's going to re-sign with New York, right? Bauer is the big guy, though. We don't know what's going to happen with Bauer. JT Rilamudo as well, right? Now, Rilamudo's market is a little bit lower now, obviously. I think it's the Mets. I think the Mets are going to sign him. The Mets have been targeting him throughout the entirety of spring train or the entirety of free agency. And I just think like once one of these top free agent guys goes in the market, I think then the other free agents will want to get their signatures down because they see, let's say Trevor Bauer signs a 1-year deal, right? And it's worth $22 million. You go, okay, Trevor Bauer signed for this much. Let's see if I can get this much per year. And it's someone like JT Rilamudo. It's someone like Liam Hendricks. It's someone like It's somebody with essential value that can help a team win now. And I just think that free agency, I think after Christmas is when free agency is going to pop off. Obviously, we've had COVID-19. It's been such a hectic year. I think a lot of players just want to relax, be with their families. They're not really worried about where they're going to be playing next season just yet. They're more worried about spending the holidays with their friends and family. And I think after this new year, we go into 2021, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to choose where they're going to be, and they're going to start to list their options, and we're going to see a hectic January for free agency. That's my opinion on free agency. At least I don't know if that's exactly going to happen, but at the same time, you kind of look at it and you think, haven't really seen much there, like, haven't really seen much in free agency. Like, of course, you have some of the deals, which we'll be getting into right now. The Rangers did agree with a deal with outfielder David Dahl. It is going to be a 1 year, approximately $3 million for that 1 year. There have not been any terms announced as of yet. Now, another signing that was made, the Rays did trade first baseman Brandon Lowe to the Rangers. This is a 6-player deal that includes 3 prospects going to Tampa Bay, and most prominently, catcher/outfielder Heriberto Hernandez. Now, another big signing that was made, the Mariners had signed pitcher Chris Flexen to a 2-year, $4.75 million deal for 2023 player option. And we also had the White Sox sign outfielder Adam Eaton to a 1-year, $7 million contract with an $8.5 million club option or a $1 million buyout for the 2022 season. We also had the Royals sign first baseman Carlos Santana to a 2-year, $17.5 million contract. And then we also, on December the 8th, we had the Giants sign a pitcher, Matt Weisler. He signed a 1-year, $1.15 million contract. Then we have the Lance Lynn trade. We have the Rangers trading Lance Lynn to the White Sox for Dane Dunning. And the Rangers also will be receiving minor league left-handed pitcher Avery Weems. And then the last deal to report for free agency so far is another trade, as the Cincinnati Reds did trade away pitcher Rafael Iglesias and some cash considerations to the Los Angeles Angels for pitcher Noel Ramirez and a player to be named later. So those are really all of the trades and signings that have been made so far. So you see guys like Carlos Santana getting signed, but some of those bigger name guys have not been picked up yet. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the upcoming year. Now, moving on, we are going to be going through the top MLB free agents in this offseason, and we're going to be judging when they're going to go and where they are going to go. So, first off, we're going to be talking about the number 1 free agent, in my opinion, and that is going to be Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer, again, is going to be the guy that ultimately starts up the entire free agent market for this year. Trevor Bauer has always been one to sign 1-year contracts. The question is, will he sign a 1-year contract this time around, or will he change it up, right? Will he change it up and sign a 4 or 5-year deal with the team, right? I don't think he will. I think he's going to sign a 1-year contract with whatever team he chooses to go to. But at the end of the day, I think if I'm Trevor Bauer and I have interest from 20 plus teams, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to set the free agent market for everyone else, right? There's going to be a team that offers Trevor Bauer a ridiculous contract. He could be the one to be like, yeah, I'm going to take this deal at 5 years, $198 million. And that's just going to set off the entire free agency market, and it's going to encourage the other players to be able to go in and make their move. And speaking of guys who could be making their move right after Trevor Bauer, let's go on to our number 2 free agent, and that's going to be JT Rilamudo, the Philadelphia Phillies catcher. Now, we saw Grandal, right? We know what happened with Grandal. He signed a 4-year, $73 million deal with the White Sox. And again, right, it's 2020. Money's a little bit different this year. So we'll see what happens with Rilamudo. But I think JT Rilamudo is going to get $100+ million from whatever team signs him. And I think that team is going to be Steve Cohen's Mets. And the reason why I say that is because the Mets have been linked with JT Rilamudo since the start of free agency, ever since, honestly, since the LA Dodgers won the World Series and Justin Turner had COVID on a baseball field. JT Rilamudo has been targeted by the Mets pretty much since then. And I think that if you look at JT Rilamudo, he's the combination of everything. He hits for contact. He can hit for power. He's good. He can run fast. He's a great fielder. He does just about everything. And he's a great clubhouse guy. So I see JT Rilamudo. It's going to be multi-year for sure. I think it's going to be over $100 million for him. And I think the Mets are going to be the ones to pull the trigger on him and get him signed. Moving on over to that number 3 spot, we have George Springer, formerly of the Houston Astros. Now, obviously, George Springer's age and injury history could limit the amount of money that he makes throughout his contract, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that he is a fantastic player and should be, I'm not going to say respected because of what happened in 2017, but we digress. And Springer most likely will not be staying with the Houston Astros this offseason. He will be taking his talents most likely somewhere else. But the question is, right, will he be able to win again? That's the big thing that I think that Springer is kind of looking at. He's thinking, am I going to win with the guys that I have on this team or compared to this team or this team? And it's a tough choice for Springer to be able to make. He's not going to be making nearly as much money as what some of these guys are going to be making too, because obviously of that age and injury history throughout last season and the season before that. So at the end of the day, the Jays have been going after Springer, right? Every single team possible, I think, has been going after George Springer, and it's a matter of who's going to give him the most money and where does he want to play, right? Where does he want to call home for the next 3-4 years, right? Because that's ultimately for a player what they are thinking about when they're going to a new team. They think, am I going to win? Am I going to like it in this city? Am I going to like my teammates? Is my coach good, right? Or my owner's nice? Or is the GM a good guy, right? These are all things that players think about when they're moving on to a new team. And I think if I'm Toronto or I'm New York or I'm any team that wants George Springer, you got to really give him a good pitch as to why he should come to your team. And then Springer ultimately then makes his decision on where he would want to go. But if I'm Springer, I'm waiting for Bauer to make his decision, because then you can decide what the market, then he kind of decides what the market will be. And then you can kind of go ahead and sign your contract based off of that. So again, I'll be saying it a lot, but I think Trevor Bauer is going to be the catalyst for this free agent class. Now, moving on over, we got DJ LeMahieu down at that number 4 spot. Now, I don't think DJ LeMahieu is going anywhere. Again, I think New York are going to re-sign him. They've made that one of their number 1 priorities for the offseason, is to get DJ LeMahieu back in pinstripes. And at the end of the day, with what LeMahieu has done over the past couple of seasons, you would be right to hope that he is back in pinstripes if you are a New York Yankees fan, because he's been absolutely fantastic. Right in 2019, DJ LeMahieu in 2020 had responded with a combined 922 OPS, and he provided value at multiple spots in the infield. He provides good contact hitter, and don't sleep on LeMahieu in free agency if you're any team. Yes, he is 32 years old at the time of opening day of 2021, but he's still a really good player, a really good contact player, and one of the best leadoff hitters in all of baseball. Moving on over to the number 5 spot, we've talked about him quite a lot already this episode. It is Marcel Ozuna, the reigning designated hitter of the year. Now, again, we talked about this a little earlier, so we won't get into it too much, but Ozuna has to go to the American League and continue playing at that DH role. Whatever team grabs him, it is going to be a fantastic team. And you basically, at that point, once you have Ozuna, you have your DH sorted for the entire year, bearing in mind that he doesn't get injured. But whichever team signs him can cross that path if it ever does come. Now, moving on over to the number 6 position, we have Didi Gregorius. Now, the reason why I've put Didi Gregorius a little higher compared to most times or most lists that I have made throughout this offseason is because, again, this is somebody who there's a lot of shortstops in this year's free agency class. And you kind of take a look at Didi. He was a former Yankee. He did really well in Philly, and Philly gave him a chance of a big contract. And Didi is also the type of guy to not strike out a lot. He's not going to strike out very much. He's a great fielder. He was able to replace Derek Jeter somewhat really well on New York. New York didn't want to re-sign him, so he went to the Phillies. He had a breakout year in Philly. Now, whichever team takes him is taking a little tiny gamble on him not having as good of a year as he did in Philly, but I still think he's going to have a good enough of a season to the point where whichever team does end up trying to sign him, it's not going to be detrimental if he's doesn't have as good of a season. It won't be detrimental towards your salary cap. And again, you're getting a guy who's not striking out that much, so it's a win-win for whichever team does indeed sign him, especially if they have struggled, especially if that team, bear in mind, has struggled with strikeouts in the past. Now, moving on over to our number 7 spot, Justin Turner. Yes, the 36-year-old third baseman who just won the World Series with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, I've seen a lot of rumors of the Toronto Blue Jays reaching out to Justin Turner's agent and trying to get him to sign over there for a 1-year contract. Now, if I'm Toronto, no. Just no. Do not. I've mentioned it a lot already this episode, but you kind of take a look at how old Turner is. He'll be 36 at the start of the season. He's not a young guy anymore, and you kind of, if you're in the American League, you have to have him at the DH spot, especially going up against probably one of the best divisions in all of Major League Baseball. And especially against guys who are hitting the ball hard. Third base is obviously a hot corner in the sport. And you can't, like a 36-year-old playing third base, especially when you have such a young team already, it's just pointless, really. Like, the Jays are still a few years away from being that elite team that everyone's watching out for in the playoffs. And right now, they're not at that point. I would say if Justin Turner was 36 years old in the year 2023 or 2022 even, I would say, you know what? Go ahead and sign Justin Turner to a 1-year deal and see if you can get him a World Series ring, right? But obviously, Turner has won already. I don't think he needs to go anywhere else. I think he just is going to re-sign with the Dodgers, and that's going to be that. Now, moving on over to our number 8 spot, and it is going to be Liam Hendricks, okay? Now, our last few spots are going to be relief pitchers, but Liam Hendricks, we've already mentioned him, right? 1.79 ERA, 110 plus innings, 160 strikeouts over the last 2 seasons. He's just been absolutely incredible. And you kind of look at some of the teams that need relief pitching in this league, and all of them could desperately use somebody like Liam Hendricks in their rotation and in their bullpen. I've been saying the Mets since the beginning of this episode really is what they should do because they need desperate help in relief pitching. DeGrom would be thankful for it and may keep DeGrom on the team a little bit longer, knowing that he's going to get a couple of extra wins to his resume, and it's going to really help out DeGrom's status as a player as well, and it's going to make him want to stay in New York because I know for a fact probably that Steve Cohen wants DeGrom staying in New York as long as he can. So if I'm the Mets, I'm looking to sign as many free agents that are going to help your key guys stay for as long as possible. Now, we're going to be talking about just one more free agent so far this year. And this is a guy who he's been okay, right? And he is the other catcher in this free agent class that's really, really good. And it's James Mccann, right? James Mccann was the catcher for the Chicago White Sox. And right now, the catching position over there, it's just too competitive right now. Obviously, the job right now belongs to Yasmani Grandal. Zach Collins, he's a prolific power hitting prospect, is the future catcher of that team. But where does that really put James Mccann, right? I think Mccann leaves the White Sox. He's going to be that number 2 catcher. And for the catcher market, right, there are quite a few catchers that are going to free agency this year, but JT Rilamudo is going to be the one for the catchers that once he signs a contract, it's going to be crazy to see how quickly the other catchers go into tune and sign contracts with different teams as well. So I just think for free agency for this year, it's going to come down to the top guys, and it always has in the past for baseball. It's going to come down to the top guys who sign contracts with these teams, and the other players, like the second best players in the position or the third best players in the position in that free agency class, are going to follow suit and try to get their contract signed. So I think free agency, it's just going to be a hectic few days or even a couple of weeks. But it's going to be a lot of fun to see where these guys sign. And hopefully the start of the season does start when we want it to. And other than that, that's all we got today for our show. This show, Stolen Bases, can also be heard on the Barn Burner Radio Network on its 122 platforms. And you can check out barnburner.ca for all the news. Barn Burner. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it.